Hello everyone, it's Peter Blundell here, one of the co-leads on the Therapist Connect platform. Today I wanted to record and release this reflections video. The reflections videos that we do at Therapist Connect are from anyone in the community, any therapist, wherever you are in the world, who wants to reflect or discuss or share some views around a particular topic that is of interest to you. And as long as that they meet the Therapist Connect values, then we will put that up on our YouTube account and we'll share it on our social media as well. So if anybody is interested in doing a video, then please send us an email or DM us on Twitter and we'll get back to you and we'll talk you through how we can arrange that and get that organised. So the video that I want to make today is around a resolution and a motion that I have submitted to the BACP, so it will be of interest maybe to therapists in the UK. And in particular, some discussion of the SCoPEd project that the BACP is currently part of. Now, I am not somebody who would normally express my kind of frustrations or any challenges that I have as part of my role with an organisation or as part of my kind of campaign work. But for me, I think it's really important, particularly around the two issues that I'm going to discuss, that there is some openness and some transparency so that other therapists can actually see what is going on behind the scenes and also some of the real difficulties I think that members have in terms of submitting resolutions and motions to the BACP for their AGM. And I'll talk about some of those issues in a moment. So this video is my own opinion. It is not the opinion of the Therapist Connect team, who have all got their own different views. It's my own personal views and just talking about some of my own experiences of trying to get this resolution and motion submitted to the BACP. Now, the first thing that I've submitted is a resolution which asks the BACP to undertake an independent impact assessment regarding the SCoPEd project, which will examine lots of different issues, but mainly, or something that was very important for that assessment, was issues around equality and diversity within the profession, and how the SCoPEd project or framework, as it's going to be implemented, how is that going to impact on therapists who have to sign up to that framework. Now, the first thing I'd like to say is that there has been multiple members calling for an independent impact assessment. There has been membership bodies, including the National Counselling Society, who have been asking for an independent impact assessment. There is also the person-centred group, of which I'm a member, who have written to the SCoPEd project asking them for an independent impact assessment. So the very fact that I have had to write a resolution asking BACP to do an independent impact assessment is actually quite frustrating. And I believe that the SCoPEd project and BACP should have committed before now in writing to members and to the broader therapist community to advise that they will be carrying that out. Now, I've heard commentary from different people, from different organisations, saying that the project and that the BACP are open to doing a independent impact assessment. That is completely different from written confirmation that one will be carried out. And so I do find it frustrating that members have had to put this in as a resolution, because really it should be something, I think, that the project does without members having to request it. It seems like the right thing to do. So that resolution was submitted, and it was submitted by myself and seconded by Rihanna Broadway, who's also a BACP member. However, there were other people who helped craft that resolution to make sure that it fitted in with the BACP's requirements of what's needed in a resolution. And specifically, one of the things that we tried to do when we were looking at that resolution was to make sure that it was tailored to BACP members. And the reason for that is because it was a BACP resolution. It is not about any other organisation, but it was about BACP members. I was really grateful that BACP reached out to discuss that resolution. The reason why I think that's important is that last year I submitted a resolution that was rejected by the BACP without any consultation with me. So I think that anybody who submits a resolution deserves to have some specific feedback from BACP about that resolution and to give them some guidance or some support around wording that resolution if it's going to be rejected because it breaks BACP's criteria. So I was really grateful that the BACP reached out to talk through that resolution. And I really want to thank the BACP staff who helped to talk through that resolution and areas where it could possibly be improved by amending some of the wording to make it clearer around what it is that was trying to be achieved with the impact assessment. That said, there is two specific bits of requirements that the BACP requested for that resolution that I think are really, really problematic. One of the suggestions, or rather than suggestions, one of the requirements that BACP needed to make this a resolution that they would be willing to put to the members was that any discussion within the resolution and about the impact assessment needed to acknowledge that assessment needed to involve the other membership partners of the SCoPEd project. Now, one of the challenges and the difficulties I think of that is that this resolution was for BACP members. BACP members should not have to be worried about the politics of BACP's relationships with other membership bodies, of the politics of the SCoPEd project, to submit a resolution. BACP members, in my view, should be able to submit a resolution which focuses on the needs and the requirements of BACP members. There is obviously always going to be a broader political picture. However, BACP members should be entitled to submit what they think is important and not have to worry about the broader political connotations of that. That is something for BACP to worry about if and when that resolution is then agreed to go to the membership and then voted on and accepted by the membership. So there is a big conflict of interest here where some of our resolution had to be amended to make it more palatable to the SCoPEd project and to make it more inclusive, which I think is a conflict of interest between BACP as commitment to the SCoPEd project and also to their own members. So that was the first problem. And the resolution has been amended to reflect that because otherwise it was not going to be accepted by the BACP. The second issue, which I think is really quite significant, and other people will have, you will have seen maybe on social media, other people who submitted resolutions and motions who've had them rejected for this specific reason. So BACP said categorically that any resolution or motion that required the SCoPEd project or BACP to go back to members again for either a further consultation on the SCoPEd project or for a vote on whether members wanted the SCoPEd framework were going to be rejected by the BACP. Now, you will have seen on social media there was lots of other people who'd submitted resolutions and motions who had them rejected because of that. The BACP advised me that in the resolution that we submitted, it did have a requirement that once the impact assessment had been completed, that BACP would be required to go back to members to consult with them around what they now thought after receiving the information from the impact assessment. So a further consultation with members about SCoPEd. BACP advised that the resolution would not go through if that was remained in the resolution. Therefore, it has been removed from the resolution to try and ensure that there is some kind of impact assessment done, but it was reluctantly removed because I think BACP members have a right to submit a resolution asking for a consultation on absolutely anything. You know, BACP have said that they are listening to members' views on SCoPEd, but they're not listening it through a formal consultation, and I think that's wrong. If members want to request that through the resolutions and motions process, I don't see how BACP can deny that. However, our resolution has been changed to take out that requirement because we were advised if it was included, then it would not be submitted to members to vote on, which I think is a denial of BACP members' rights. The final issue that I wanted to talk about, and I think this really for me kind of represents one of the really biggest challenges, and I feel like was actually really unfair of BACP, was that after amending the resolution and submitting it to try and make it more palatable to BACP to get it through to the AGM, BACP came back and asked to change one word in the resolution. The word was will, and that was in relation to BACP will undertake an impact assessment, and it will do these certain things, and we specified certain things that the BACP needs to look at in that impact assessment. The BACP asked for that word will to be changed to may, as in they would undertake the impact assessment, but they may assess the issues that were listed in the resolution. Now, for me, that is such a significant change. It removes the responsibility from the BACP to have to do something, to say that they may do something, and which really isn't any kind of resolution, really. What that is that's a motion, because with the motions, BACP are not legally obliged to carry them out. They're only obliged to talk about it at one of their meetings. So they said if that word was not changed, then the resolution would be rejected. I was not happy with that word being changed to may, and I asked if the word could be changed to endeavour, because I felt that at least, it's not the same as will, but it at least gave an additional emphasis that BACP would try to assess those things, would do their best in some way to assess the areas that we had asked for. Now, staff went back to the board. It was the board who has requested this change, and tried to ask if the wording could then be changed. At which I got told that the BACP board was unavailable to make that decision, and there was no time left to make any further amendments, and therefore either the word was changed from will to may, or else again the resolution would not be accepted. Again, I really think this is against BACP members' rights, and I also feel that that wording could have been asked to be changed in my initial meeting with the BACP, rather than left to the very last minute and the day before the announcements were going out around the resolutions and motions. And again, it has been changed, because if I'd stood up on principle to say no, that wording should not be included, members would not get an opportunity to vote on a resolution around an impact assessment on SCoPEd. And again, I felt like it was more important to get the resolution out there in some form, rather than it not be submitted to the members at all. This process is extremely frustrating, and in my view is extremely complicated and unnecessarily complicated, and is not done with transparency and openness and clarity about what members can and can't submit. I think there's a huge doubt over whether the BACP's rule around whether something is in BACP's interest or not is extremely subjective, and I think it's really difficult for any member to really assess whether something is in BACP's interest, whether it's in BACP members' interest, is it in the SCoPEd project's interest? And I think actually there really needs some much more clearer guidance from the BACP around what on earth it means to be in BACP's interests and what it is that the board are making decisions on. The second thing I've submitted to the AGM is a motion which has been agreed without any changes. And that motion is asking BACP to do a consultation with members around the resolution and motions process. This is the second year that I have submitted resolutions and motions. There has been some additional clarity and some feedback from BACP this year regarding the things that I've submitted, and I think some of that has been helpful, whereas some of it is actually very confusing and I don't feel meets BACP's own guidance. I think that whole process needs to be looked at, and the people who have submitted resolutions and motions over the past few years, they need to be consulted around how they found that process, and BACP need to look at the reasons why members aren't really voting in the resolutions and motions process and why they're having difficulty submitting those resolutions and motions. Personally, I think that there should be clearer guidance. I think once somebody has submitted a resolution and a motion, they should initially get either a decision from the BACP or some guidance, written guidance around why something is being rejected, specific reasons, or clarity about what wording should be changed or could be changed and why. Once members have received that written feedback, I believe that they should then be able to have a conversation with a member of staff from BACP, who then may be able to explain that further, and then again resubmit their resolution or motion. But it's not for me to decide. I think BACP need to consult with members to explore this process in much more detail, because when you look at people's experiences of this process, a large proportion of people or members are not finding it helpful or transparent. The other thing that I think the consultation should look at is I think it needs to look at the amount of members who vote in the resolutions and motions process. I believe last year 8% of members became involved. That means 92% of members do not vote in that process. And BACP need to understand why is that percentage so low, and also what can they do to help members to engage with that process, or to encourage people to engage with that process, so they can get a much higher percentage of therapists being involved. I think this process has been really frustrating, but I am glad that at least the resolution, although it's been significantly amended, and the motion has been agreed by BACP to be put to members. So I would really be grateful if you could support both of those items on the agenda and vote for them, so that we can try and have some significant things happen over the next 12 months with the impact assessment, and hopefully looking at BACP's resolution and motion process. Okay, thank you.